Good afternoon, San Diego and interweb. My name is Martha Henderson. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a board member here at San Diego Pride. I'm also the resident sports fanatic here at San Diego Pride. Welcome to our podcast. Thank you for joining us today for a conversation about LGBTQ athletes in professional sports. At this point, I'd like to introduce you to our amazing guests to the screen. First up, we have Collin Martin. Collin uses he, him pronouns and is a professional soccer player who plays as a midfielder for the San Diego Loyal. Welcome, Collin.
Hey, Martha. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's good to see you. We also have Maya Reddy, who uses she, her pronouns. Maya is a queer South Asian former professional golfer and an LGBTQ athlete activist. Currently, Maya is a Toll Public Interest Scholar at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, class of 2022. Welcome, Maya.
Hey, Martha, it's good to see you. It's good to be here.
Good to see you. You got the sunshine today.
I know.
Take advantage of it.
All of you.
Usually we're bragging about it. And last but not least, we have Billy Bean, who uses he, him pronouns. Billy is a former professional player and currently serves Major League Baseball as the vice president and special assistant to the commissioner. Hey, Billy.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Martha. It's good to see you, Collin and Maya, again. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us today. Before we begin, I'd like to give you all an opportunity to briefly introduce yourself and your background. So, Collin, you want to get us started on that?
Yeah, sure. I'm Collin Martin. I play for San Diego Loyal, the professional soccer team here. Last year was our first year professionally. This year will be my 9th season professionally. I started off at DC United, then was in Minnesota, and I'm originally from Maryland.
Oh, Maryland. That's where I'm from. That's
exciting.
Nice. Maya.
Hi, I, as Martha mentioned, am a former professional golfer. I made it up to the Symetra Tour before having to take a step back due to a lot of homophobia and xenophobia and discrimination that I faced. And I turned that into fighting alongside folks like Collin and Billy for more inclusion and a more equitable and inclusive kind of sports arena for LGBTQ athletes. So to that end, I am at law school currently trying to survive a semester or a year of going to school online. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here with all of you.
Thanks, Maya. It's good to see you. And Billy.
My name's Billy Bean. I am a former San Diego Padre, and I'm one of two former Major League Baseball players in the 152-year history of our sport to ever publicly disclose that they are gay. Glenn Burke was the first, and I left baseball right as I was starting to become a pretty good big leaguer. My partner died of HIV-related causes while I was a member of the San Diego Padres, and I was not out to my family or anyone at the time, and kind of walked away from baseball. And it wasn't until my story surfaced a few years after my last game in the major leagues, and the LGBTQ community kind of pulled me out of the darkness, that my life journey brought me back to baseball, where I, as Martha said, I serve as vice president, special assistant to the commissioner. and I live in New York City, and I work to broaden respect and acceptance in our workplace, and constantly encouraging improvement of our culture and the day-to-day ops of a sport that's a tremendous challenge.
Yes, you have your work in front of you for sure. Thank you all. You were all grateful. We're so grateful to have such a great panel today. We have a series of previously submitted questions, and if time allows, we may be able to answer questions submitted by our viewers in our comments section. So if you're watching this and you have a question, pop it in our comments section, and if we can get to it, we absolutely will. Our hope is that the questions that we've had previously submitted will be sufficient enough. You were all invited to be a part of the panel, not only because of you are amazing athletes with great talent, but also because you're all advocates for the LGBTQ community. What is an advocacy initiative that you are most proud of or are currently working on? Maya, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think as many folks may know, there has been a really horrifying rise of anti-trans athletic bills popping up around the country. I actually was sitting in and listening to the continuation of hearings in South Carolina earlier today. But that currently is something that I've been most focused on. I think that there's so many folks that say it, but truly trans liberation, especially for trans folks of color, is kind of, it's directly related to equity and inclusion for queer folks and other folks of color. So I think that, this issue, trans inclusion in sports, is incredibly important. Not only does it kind of, right now, these bills kind of are focused at kids, which just is really horrible to be targeting kids because they just want to play sports like the rest of us. But we're also kind of seeing it on higher levels of sports. And I think one of the biggest things that is important to notice about these bills are the way that they condone the policing of gender. And so when you think about the policing of gender within the sports spaces, you see that kind of throughout history with female athletes. There's a lot of commentary about female athletes being too masculine or not feminine enough, and a lot of commentary on our worth kind of being tied to our appearances. And, outside of the trans-specific conversation, we have seen that throughout Serena Williams and Venus Williams' careers in the way that they're kind of targeted for being too masculine because of how they look, or, certain specific ideas of what gender is supposed to look like. We're also seeing it kind of more famously on an international stage with Caster Semenya and the way that the IOC is, really kind of trying to force her to take different medical procedures in order to allow her to compete, which again is incredibly invasive. And so all of this, it is so important, whether or not it's focused on the professional level or the scholastic level, because if we're condoning this kind of policing of gender, this kind of availability of just being able to question a kid for being, quote unquote, male or female, thus subjecting them to certain invasive testing, then that, we can see that kind of metastasizing towards so many other people, because as many queer folks know, right, there's a difference between gender identity and gender presentation, and oftentimes those two things get conflated. And when they're conflated in the ways that they are being in these bills, it just creates an incredibly dangerous atmosphere in sports, where we're all here to have fun, whether or not we're playing at the professional level or, the scholastic level. At the end of the day, all of us who went professionals because we love the sport. So to kind of add this layer of, policing on top of it is incredibly harmful for all of us. But very long answer to saying that's kind of the biggest and most important issue that I feel, and that I'm grateful to be a part of, just kind of screaming about to people to pay attention and talk about as well.
That is great, Maya. And Martha's internet just dropped out because of the rain. But yeah, a good point about folks wanting to just play. It's not about competition. It's about these kids wanting to play. And it looks like Martha's back on, but I'm going to pass it over to Collin while we get her ready.
Sweet. Yeah, something I've been thinking about a lot lately is why there are so many women in professional sports that are out and proudly representing their teams while doing it as out athletes. And the fact that there's so few men, at least on the team side of things, that are out and gay, it's just sad for me. So something I've been trying to do is just advocate at the youth levels for more inclusion, and just trying to be present myself and trying to let kids know that there's a place for them in sport, and but more so just trying to understand why the male side is so far behind the female side, and speaking about it, and also speaking about how I think rarely do we say how male athletes can look up to female athletes, and I'm trying to talk about how my idols are Megan Rapinoe and Abby Wambach and players that I grew up watching, and more so than ever, I'm in awe of how they handle themselves, not only in their sport, but as queer advocates as well. So just talking about that stuff, wondering what we can do better on the male side, wondering what we can do better with youth male sports and spaces, and sort of talking about that.
Thanks, Collin. I'm so sorry I got bumped out a little bit there. Sorry about that.
No worries.
But, thank you. Billy, what's something that you've been working on?
Well, my job over the past 7 years, when I came back to baseball as its very first ambassador for inclusion, it's so interesting how far we have evolved in the prioritization of the dialogue in professional sports. It was a novelty in 2013 and 14 for sure, and thankfully there's been a tremendous progression in support for education and conversations. And we've been living through a divisive period the last 4 years like we've never seen ever. And it's a great example of how important it is for leadership to be the initiator of a conversation about acceptance and respect and love and support and all those things. So my job, and obviously the challenges that we've all been facing the last year with the pandemic, but normally I am usually in an airplane twice a week traveling around, and in professional sports, and Collin makes a really interesting point about the dynamic between women's athletics and men's athletics in the perpetuation of culture, and how creating an environment that's accepting and respectful is a tremendous challenge. One of the main challenges of baseball is the scale of the sport. In 2019, we had 8,000 professional athletes wearing a baseball jersey somewhere in the world. And every year we would draft 1,200 players, or 500 free agents would sign. So 1,700 of those 8,000 would leave and 1,700 would arrive. And so the consistency of the education and the messaging that did not exist for me has been, I would say, my greatest accomplishment in sports. And that is to, for our athletes to, on the cornerstone of eliminating conversations about, or eliminating racism, conversations about that, and eliminating sexism, which is pervasive in sports. In my opinion, that has allowed for an LGBTQ inclusive conversation. And the unique opportunity that I have as the only living example, past or present, in baseball, to initiate that conversation has allowed the players to accept me on a different level. And one of the things I wanted to say to Collin, who I had a chance to meet in Minnesota a couple of years ago at the Twins Pride game before you were playing in San Diego, and you threw out the first pitch. But my point is that we have just an amazing opportunity to continue that conversation in a way that is comprehensive, to remain current. And I've been able to create education programming in baseball that starts at the very, very earliest levels, in a way that is prevention and education, and not like spinning when someone goes awry. And my point about Collin was, as Collin, while you're playing, that is the greatest message and initiative that you can have, being visible and out like you are. You have to, the longer you play, the more impactful you will be. There will be so much time for you to be a warrior champion off the field. So just know that as a former athlete, how appreciative I am that you are grinding, and you know, your teammates being ambassadors for you in an amazing moment last season. These are ways that educators or former players, there's no way I can be as impactful as you can be as an active athlete. So I try to pull on all the examples out in the universe of these fierce female athletes. Maya was on a panel discussion of mine with the Los Angeles Angels, and we had the most amazing collection, which I'll share, you know, as our conversation goes. But you know, continuing and inspiring people to be visible and be their best self, and advancing that conversation, advancing equality in any way we can, in any conversation we can. That's dearest to me.
Thank you so much. So this is a bit more of personal questions, but did you come out as a member of the LGBTQ community before, during, or after playing in your professional sport? And what was that like? And what were reactions, what you expected? So Billy, we'll start with you on this one.
Well, I'm much older than the other two panelists here today. So I came out after, long after my career. I left in the middle of my career, and it was in the middle 90s. And as I said, my partner died of HIV-related causes. I was told by a physician that I would probably become HIV positive and suffer the same fate. I was uninformed. I didn't know anything about our community. I was young. I've been in baseball my whole life. And, you know, as the other two panelists will tell you, to rise to the top of your sport, you have to be singular in nature and focus literally every single minute of your life to, you know, get the most out of your talent. And I grew up in a different time and place without the internet, in a very conservative family. My stepfather was in the Marine Corps at Camp Pendleton, and a uniformed law enforcement officer for 25 years after that. And I was the oldest of 5 boys. I wasn't raised in an inclusive environment. I was around racial diversity, but not conversations that it just didn't exist in my time. The only images I ever saw were just horrifically negative and unrelatable to me. My whole world was in the major leagues, and all my heroes and all my friends and all, it felt like that was the only place I would want to be. And I tried to navigate a double life almost, if you will, to hide my partner. I wasn't out to my family. I never went to any establishment in San Diego that gay or lesbian people or LGBTQ people would go, because I was a Padre and I thought somebody would see me. And
how'd you meet your partner, Billy?
What's that?
How'd you meet your partner?
I met my partner in the off season while I was married to my ex-wife in Rockville, Maryland, at Bally's Gym.
Maryland.
Oh, wow. That's
Shout out to Maryland.
That's like 10 minutes down the road.
A 24-hour Bally's Gym. And I had never had any kind of a productive conversation with anybody that I thought might be gay. And I fell in love at first sight with my former partner, Sam. And I left my marriage literally a week after I met him, without any idea how that relationship would work out. But I just knew I had no children. We were so young. we shouldn't have gotten married at that age anyways. It was a different time, and two families wanting two kids to get married. And so I guess a long answer is that it wasn't until I left baseball and moved as far away from San Diego as I could to Miami Beach that slowly but surely I started to meet people in our community, and it would have changed my life had I had that opportunity. If I had run into Martha, in San Diego when I was 25 years old and have one friend, we could have talked about the unique nature of what we are experienced together. And that's why, visibility is so vital. You don't always get a hug or a thank you but you can be an influencer and impact other lives by how you live your life and your accomplishments, even if it's just being a great neighbor or something. There's no limitation. There's and it wasn't, and that was probably the hardest part for me, to not have realized my talent as a big leaguer, shorten my career, the devastating feeling of never being able to play again once I left it. Those were scars that took a long time to heal, and not saying goodbye properly to my partner after he passed away, and my family never knowing him. Like, it's just horrific expense of life in the closet and how damaging that can be. So if I knew now what I didn't know then, I think about, being a player in today's game and what type of decisions and how Collin might have influenced me and changed my life. And so it was a different time and place, but I definitely regret that I wasn't equipped with what I needed to know as a player in order to make that decision.
Well, we're certainly appreciative of you sharing your experiences, Billy, and you're an inspiration to a lot of us. So thank you for sharing that. So Collin, I think we all know that you are currently out. So as a professional soccer player, at what point did you come out? Have you always been out? Were you out as a college athlete? What was that experience? What has that experience been like for you?
Yeah, growing up, definitely not out. And at college, it was really tough too. I went to Wake Forest for a year. And part of the reason why I think I needed to leave, and luckily I signed my first contract when I was 18 for DC United.
Wow.
But I knew not only was it going to be a big step professionally, but moving home to DC, it was a big opportunity to kind of explore my sexuality. But when I think about like me wanting to come out, it took a while, because initially I thought with Robbie Rogers being out, and at the time I was in the league at the same time, I was like, you know what, this is super cool. I'm interested in how people view him, and I think it's so important. But I was like, he's done it. I don't need to do it. But it took a while for me to be like, oh, actually one is not enough. And then it took some friends and some people to kind of nudge me and be like, you really could make a big difference. I thought, it really wouldn't be that big of a deal if I did. So when I was in Minnesota, after I left DC, by the time I left DC, I told my family, my friends, and a couple teammates, and I'd built up a lot of courage from their positive support, so that when I went to Minnesota, I was able to be completely myself, and I was going to stop the lying. I was going to be honest with teammates. And I think that trade and that move to a new team was really good for me, because I could kind of just start with a blank slate and just go and see from there. And I was super supported by the team, and was really entrenched in the Twin Cities gay community. And basically I had a friend one day that really nudged me, and he was like, you really don't realize how big of a deal it would be. And he literally was just like, what, Robbie had retired, and he'd be like, there's no one, if you would come out, it would be a big deal. And I guess I never thought, you never really think how big of a deal it would be, or how much it would mean to someone. So I'm really, really thankful for his guidance. And then another honest thing is I was just tired of lying. I had stopped lying to my friends and family and teammates for a good year and a half, 2 years. But even having to lie to a reporter, it just felt so disingenuous. And a reporter would ask me, why are you supporting gay rights or gay athletes this year? And I would just have to lie and be like, oh, because I think it's right. No, it's not just right. I'm gay, and I'm so happy that my straight teammates are supporting me and other gay athletes, right? So it took a while, but yeah, I came out about maybe 3 years ago, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Oh, we're so lucky to have you, Collin. Thank you for sharing that. San Diego is super proud and excited to have you, and looking forward to watching some games here in San Diego, hopefully in person sometime soon.
I hope so.
Thanks for sharing that. Hey, Maya, your turn. You came out during, or you left the sport because of the homophobia, as you mentioned earlier. So, were you out when you were playing?
Yeah, actually, kind of similar to Collin, Megan Rapinoe has always been kind of like a big idol of mine. And not just because we're from the same town, which I always have to mention because Reading is tiny, and she is our claim to fame. Yeah, I mean, I came out to myself. Like, it was a whole process because you come out to yourself and you kind of process through that. And then you start coming out to folks close to you. And so I went through that in college, and I luckily had a really incredible team that was really supportive, never thought twice about, coming out or being queer or having the opportunity to kind of just explore what my identity means to me. But I think that the difference between when I was playing in college and then turning professional is that like I had that team around me, and I had those folks who like knew who I was and who I, even if I was like on 17 and I knew one of my teammates, Lauren, was just teeing off, I was like, okay, I know she's on the course and has my back. And it was just kind of like this feeling of camaraderie and having your team there. It felt really protective and really empowering. So when I turned professional, which I am so glad that I did, despite some of the negative experiences, it was like I wanted to chase my dream. I was like not done playing golf, and I wanted to keep getting better. And when I turned pro, I was all alone. Like, golf is a really, really lonely sport, and especially when you're playing professionally and on the mini tours, you don't have a caddy all the time because caddies are expensive, and they should be because they do a lot of incredible work. But you're alone and you're traveling, week in and week out to different tournaments. For me, it was shuffling back and forth from San Diego to Arizona to Vegas to Florida, and I was just by myself most of the time. And the players that I played with were fantastic, really wonderful folks who I'm really lucky to still be close with them. But I didn't know them very well. And even though I was comfortable with who I was, and I was very much queer, very much, proud and talking about queer issues, I noticed how oppressive, I think is like the best word to kind of describe it, but oppressive the golf culture is. And so in golf, I think many of us know the stereotype of golf being the country club sport and being pretty exclusive to, wealthier white men, which unfortunately has been kind of like the past of the sport. And as much as I was like, no, like it's changing. Like, we have folks like Tiger Woods, like Michelle Wie, Lorena Ochoa, and all of these really incredible, Danielle Kang, all of these folks who are just really incredible, and this really amazing visibility. It's still not there on, like the day-to-day clubhouse levels. And I, unfortunately, I guess to make matters worse for myself, being a queer woman of color, the brunt of my career happened during the 2016 election, where more folks were feeling a bit more emboldened to say the not great things that they may have believed or thought before. And so kind of not only was I feeling this pressure to fit the country club image, but I was also actually hearing folks around me say queerphobic and racist things. My family is Indian, and though we're not Muslim, I always like to say racist folks don't tend to differentiate between types of brown. And I would hear folks on the course say a lot of anti-immigrant things, and my parents are both immigrants. A lot of close people in my family are Muslim. After 9/11, my dad, being a brown man, faced more intense security and screening when we went through airports and different places. So to hear that happen again in a space where it's like, wait a second, I am good at this sport. Like, I belong here. Like, what more do I have to do? Do I need to bring out my All-American certificates to prove that I'm here? There was just like a lot of this compounding of like racism. Caitlyn Jenner had recently come out. And so I was hearing folks, as they started to process Caitlyn's identity and Caitlyn speaking her truth, they were going through their own, queer and transphobic kind of processing. And that was really hard because it was kind of listening to people in real time, essentially saying like, this is different. We don't like it. Why can't it go back to the same? And I was sitting there being like, oh, okay, so you're coming for, my family. Now you're coming for like, you're saying that my identity is weird or off. And this is not great because I'm just here to hit the ball really far and get it into the hole some way, somehow, hopefully with as little strokes as possible. And now I'm having to contend with kind of feeling even more so unwelcome on the golf course than I otherwise, did. And it kind of hit a head when, I would go to tournaments and heard tournament directors make, in the guise of a joke, these homophobic and racist jokes, to the point where I remember trying to say something back to them. And I was met with why can't you just take a joke? Like, where's your sense of humor? And it's like, yo, I don't want to be hearing this on the first tee on the first day of a tournament. And that kind of colored a lot of my career to the point where it was just like, having to go to play the thing that you love and that you're good at, and you just want to play the game. And yet you're hearing from all of these different places that you're not supposed to be there in all of these different ways. And for me, I ended up having a pretty big mental and emotional breakdown because, as Billy was mentioning, your sport ends up being your like singular focus. And if you're now having to kind of like balance focusing on your sport to kind of play at the highest level and also manage kind of like this really harmful emotional stuff that's being lobbed at you, it doesn't kind of fit together as well as I wish it would. I wish my brain was big enough to be able to kind of balance all of those things together. So I ended up taking a step back from the sport. And, also, Billy, I really grateful for what you just said about kind of how you had to step away from the sport and that feeling of frustration of not kind of completing it and feeling like a lot of regret. It's, I go through that daily. And now I have a putting course set up in my apartment so I can kind of maybe at least remember how to putt properly. But it's really hard. And it's kind of like the biggest reason why I've, wanted to be an advocate and do this work and have these conversations, because it's like, in golf, there isn't any visibility. There's barely any visibility. Tad Fujikawa just came out. Mel Reid is out on the female tour, but there's still an immense amount of sexism. There's still immense amount of racism. There isn't visibility. For me, I looked up to Robbie Rogers and Megan Rapinoe and Abby Wambach, but they were not in my sport. And that was like amazing and also sad, because I was like, wait a second. I know I can be a queer athlete, but can I be a queer athlete in my sport? So that's kind of like, I don't know, just to fully emphasize how important it is that like, Collin, you are out and doing and so visible in the way that you are. It's like, it's huge for everybody in any sport that they're playing. And I know that I definitely bought a San Diego Loyal jersey right after that match. So I have that in my closet right now because
oh, that's amazing.
It was really, really amazing to just see folks be like, yeah, no, this isn't okay. And we're going to visibly take a stand because it's like, yeah, you're helping us feel less alone. Other folks feel less alone.
We're going to get to that in a minute and get Collin's insight on that moment and help fill everybody in if you're watching this live stream and aren't familiar with what Maya's talking about. Maya, I just want to comment, it's probably a lot different to what your point is in golf as it is in a team sport. Coming out in a team sport, you have the support of your entire team. And I would imagine, and Collin can probably confirm this, that it gives you a little bit more strength and probably, allows you to. So being an out golfer, God, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing that with us. So in your opinion, has the professional sports world become more accepting of the LGBTQ athletes in recent years? And what are some areas you'd like to see some improvement on? Collin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'd say there's a little improvement, but there's still a lack of visibility, like we said. I've seen a ton of improvement in the locker room, and just guys' willingness to have conversations with me and ask me questions and just be more open to understanding at a personal level. I've seen that. But obviously we have a ton of growth, and it still is really frustrating, like I said, seeing the women's side be just like creating a culture and an atmosphere where it's just expected that there's gonna be acceptance, and expected that you're going to be able to be yourself, and there's going to be no issues. Sorry, I can't really answer this question because I have so many things I want to say to Maya and Billy. But Maya,
we'll have it after the session. We'll have a little Q&A after the session.
I know. But Maya, like golf is like such a crazy sport that you can really get to know the people you play with, and they really show your their true colors, like when you're out in the course. So I'm going to check my privilege a little bit, but we joined a country club, my family, when I was about 10, 11 or 12. And it's basically just never been a place where I've felt very comfortable. And before I was able to come out to my parents, like they would kind of question why I didn't feel comfortable at the country club, and like why I left the 4th of July parade and just walked home because I didn't want to be there. And so it's a place where I've had to really be extremely comfortable with myself in order to maybe enjoy it out there on the course and just in the clubhouse. But, I tell you what, it's tough at times. Yeah. But I just needed to say that. Sorry. But Martha, go ahead.
Thanks, Collin. We have such great questions for everybody. I want to try and get to all of them. So, Billy, do you want to comment on?
I want to add one thing. I think that it's very interesting sometimes how our community generalizes that and has very high expectations for our athletes to come out and make that decision. And Maya's description of what the journey to the top of pro sport is about was spot on. I mean, the loneliness, the isolation, it's interesting. I've had the amazing privilege to get to know Billie Jean King and Martina Navratilova because of being out in the visible in baseball. And they're two amazing people. And they always, in contrast to the idea, there's both sides of the conversation where, Martina used to say, no matter how biased people were, much discrimination I was directed at me. I was the best tennis player in the world, so I was always invited to the party. And in Collin's experience, or a team athlete, there's nothing more important than walking into your clubhouse and feeling the respect of your teammates. That's what every athlete wants at the beginning. Collin, you're 9 years in. So your first year, maybe you could relate what that first year was like, coming out, leaving college, playing with international players, and they're, like American player, whatever, that whole bias kind of thing. And as a young player in the big leagues, it never crossed my mind that I would share something personal about my life, because I just wanted them to look at me as a baseball player. So my point is that every person's story, every person's journey is unique and difficult in its own way. And it can be triumphant and overpowering and influence, hundreds of thousands or millions of people, but everyone deserves an individual look at that process. And if Maya would have been able to reach out to me or Collin or someone else, one text might have got her through like a really bad day, a bad minute on the course. And me telling her, don't you dare let those people bother. You know what I mean? And she might still be on the tour. And this is the same way I gave up on myself, and I never gave baseball a chance to help me. My situation is totally different from hers. I didn't give my family a chance to help me. I just thought I would forever be viewed by whatever antiquated stereotypes that I was taught about gay men, which literally was the only image that was floating in my mind, And so it's just, these conversations are so important because we all have a chance to learn a little bit more about each other, and why it's so important that we continue to galvanize as a group and lift each other up and help each other. And if we do have Megan Rapinos and Abby Wambachs and, Sue Birds of the world and Collin Martins of the world, we have to support them. Jason Collins, amazing bravery in 2014. Examples like that. That to me, it's just so important that we all are a family.
Agreed. And that's why, these types of conversations are so important. And this in and of itself brings visibility to anybody that's already out there. So we have a few minutes, 15 minutes left. I love the next 3 questions are for the individual ones that I want to try to get them all in. And the first one is for you, Collin. I think most of us are pretty familiar with the story of your teammates walking off the field in a game while you were ahead 3-1 after a homophobic slur was hurled at you during a game in November. This ended up being the Outsports moment of the year. And it would made national headlines. It was an amazing experience. And Maya bringing up the fact that she went out and bought a loyal shirt after that. Can you give us a little bit of insight about how that kind of came to be? Did you as a team have a discussion about, if this happens, this is what we will do? Or did it just kind of happen in the moment? Are you, whatever you're comfortable speaking about and divulge to us, can you share that?
So I'll try to be quick. There was a lot going on there, but it was kind of a perfect storm. The game before, we had one of our players called the N-word during the game. Wow. And basically after the game, we didn't find out until after the game. And so the team after the game and in the following week was like really supporting our teammate. And we just really wish we would have known what happened so we could support him. And so the biggest thing was, hey, next time anything like this happens, please tell the right person so that we can support you. And so basically our team came together like amazing over the week and was just even closer. And basically the following game, someone used a homophobic slur against me. And it was kind of it was one of those things where he said a bunch of different bad things to me, like in the lead up to it, and whatever, I can take bad language, but it crossed the line when he brought in the homophobic slur. And the one thing that was also frustrating for me was that he knew I was gay. Like I'm pretty visible, and most guys in the league should know that by now. And so he knew that, and he wanted to hurt me or make me react or maybe punch him or do something stupid to get a red card. And so that's kind of what provoked the whole situation. And I tried to tell the ref. The ref didn't really know what to do, and he was confused by it all. And then I told my coach when it happened, and that's when he was pretty adamant about supporting me, and he was more than happy to just walk off the field because he thought it was ridiculous and unacceptable. And then obviously during halftime, my teammates were able to come together and make the decision that they were going to support me and support the team by walking off the field if there was nothing done in terms of reprimanding the player.
Well, it was a great moment. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's nice. It's awesome to have a little bit more insight to that. So Billy, this next question is for you. So if you're watching this and you're not familiar with what Out at the Park is, it's the Pride Night with the San Diego Padres. It's our event that San Diego Pride partners with, with the Padres. And in 2019, which was the last time we could have an in-person event, here in San Diego, Billy joined us and was throughout the first pitch. And then you were kind enough to come up and hang out with us in the stands and have a little chat. And during that chat, you said something to me that has resonated with me ever since. And you said, I really wish there was something like this when I was a player. And I've kind of used that as my momentum to just kind of really drive ahead and really create events and do what I can to make sure events like that are happening as a spectator. I'm not a professional athlete, I'm a professional spectator. So can you give us a little bit of insight as to how you think events like Out at the Park or Pride Nights that support our LGBTQ athletes like Collin, and what that might mean in our efforts to continue creating safe spaces?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, you're more than just a fan, Martha. You're lightning in a bottle when it comes to advancing these conversations, and you've done so much great work behind the scenes, and we're a big part of the Angels event, the first one that they had in 2019. And you also should have told everyone how I threw a perfect strike about 90 miles an hour from the mound to represent our.
You sure did.
Anyways, a lot of people think a Pride Night is the only example of progress in the sport. And I have really worked hard to challenge organizations that to not use something like that as a checklist or checkbox mark, as a sign that we're progressive, one night a year. And I've just been super proud of MLB because across the league, all 30 organizations have embraced our LGBTQ inclusive education. And so for me, the Pride Nights are kind of a celebration of those efforts that nobody gets to see during the year. But it's never lost upon me that, as I played 6 years in the major leagues, and 3 of those years in San Diego, which should have been the happiest time of my life, were many times the saddest part of my, because I just felt so isolated in hiding my partner, rushing him off back to Maryland when it wasn't good for him to be together, or my family was wanting to be around, which every professional athlete will tell you. Your family is very interested in what you're doing. And so Collin mentioned about lying. And that's it. I was a liar to everyone that I loved or loved me for so long. And I hate that about my past. And the comment I made to you was that I can't even imagine how profound or what an effect a night like that out at the park would have had when I was on the Padres. I was living in just a dark place. My partner died. I was in the closet, and I thought I was HIV positive, which unfortunately I'm not. It could have easily happened, but I didn't know. I was going to the park thinking that would be the case. And it was hard to compete at the world-class level. And I just felt like I didn't belong where I worked my whole life to be. And that messaging, and whether an athlete comes out and is strong enough and determined enough to shoulder that message or be the example of inclusion and acceptance, and judged by others, as Maya was, where people think they're being funny and they're being cruel, and sexist, most likely at the same time, that you were subjected to. But for me, I played in baseball in a time where they didn't care about education or didn't care about how women were viewed or sexualized in every image on the scoreboard or and it just, I feel gratitude, and I feel like it might have encouraged me to talk to my parents, and just that conversation might have changed my whole life. I didn't give anybody a chance because I only lived in that bad space of what I thought people would think. And so that's what I think about when I see those nights.
Great, thank you. And we're looking forward to our first night with the San Diego Loyal sometime soon, Collin, just so you know. So we're running low on time, but I want to make sure I give Maya the opportunity to answer the question that you might have seen about the president signing the executive order preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity and sexual orientation, strengthening protections for LGBTQ folks against discrimination, including young trans athletes. What impact do you think that'll have on trans acceptance in sports? And what do you think needs to change in order for trans athletes to be more welcomed within sports?
Yeah, I mean, so an executive order like that is, and a lot of the policies Billy works on, and I think that all of us are fighting for, or the big reason why I went to law school. I was like, I want to know the language to kind of like help and have that power to help put more impact behind the policies that we're putting out there, and to add kind of like an athlete's lens to it, because not a lot of athletes are kind of in that kind of policy sphere. And also, to be frank, I was still am very salty about not getting to finish out the career in the way that I wanted to. And, I wanted to kind of find a way to give back and to help create an atmosphere, not just in golf, but in sports in general, where, the next generation of athletes, or the current generation of athletes, don't face as much kind of negative instances as I did, as Billy has, as Collin has. So seeing an executive order like that just unequivocally is recognizing, sexual orientation and gender identity as being things that should be protected in anti-discrimination laws is huge. Because I remember last year when Bostock, the ruling on Bostock came out, which found Title VII, which is the employment discrimination provision of the Civil Rights Act, to protect, folks from being discriminated on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity. When that ruling came out, which was a very strong ruling, and said in no uncertain terms that, that type of discrimination is absolutely not okay and is protected under Title VII, so many of us were just waiting with bated breath to see how that's going to expand. Because of course, employment is a relatively narrow scope of spaces, and it doesn't go to the whole range of society and the places where we could face discrimination. So to see Biden, first of all, to get Biden in the office, and then to see him in kind of like the early days of his presidency sign this order that, very directly impacts kids, because it's saying that entities that are receiving federal funding have to follow, this Bostock decision, this Bostock understanding of protecting sexual orientation and gender identity. And that's huge because, there are a lot of, shitty, pardon my language, shitty things that kids can say when you're growing up. And I think that sometimes, in my experience, that was egged on by people in positions of power within schools. And I think especially within sports, like junior level sports can be super cutthroat. I've seen parents try to punch each other on the golf course. It's intense. And honestly, I think junior golf was way more intense than professional golf was. But to put that in no uncertain terms and target directly scholastic level and junior level spaces is huge, because it sets the tone that anti-discrimination is going to protect everyone, not just adults in this very specific employment sphere. And to see it being used in sports, I think is really huge, because that's kind of like the final frontier in how we're thinking about anti-discrimination. Because of Title IX, we do have this kind of like state-sanctioned separation between men and women, right? And so because of that pre-existing separation, how do you kind of come in and prevent folks from saying, trans women aren't allowed on this team, trans men aren't allowed on this team? Like, how do you kind of mess with those pre-existing separations and acknowledge the fact that gender, of course, is a social construct. And so I think that, while we are seeing so many of these horrible anti-trans bills pop up in response to the executive order, we're also seeing a lot of conversations that are centering how huge and important sports are for trans kids, for kids in general, to create community, to get to play the game that they love. And it's creating an atmosphere where we're lifting, we all want to grow the game, and you can't grow the game if you're excluding people from it. And so us kind of lifting up and focusing on like how incredible any athlete should be able to play the sport that they love. And that's only better, and that only creates a better environment for the rest of us, because you just get these amazing, the next generation could be like incredible. Like we can find we're always searching for the next Tiger Woods, right? So it's like the next Tiger Woods could be out there right now having a hard time getting into sports because of, this really discriminatory rhetoric that's out there. So I hope that, we have like a long way to go, like a really, really long way to go. But I hope that because we're talking about this issue and we're talking and including trans folks, front and center in these inclusive conversations, and centering those conversations on, like the right to play and the pure enjoyment and amazing kind of things that you get from playing sports. I think that's huge. And it demystifies this thing that, once you get to the professional leagues, becomes so like financially focused, so like winning focused. And even then at like the highest level, we're still playing because we love the game. So I think that kind of through line has been heartening to see, even though the rest of the conversations have been quite tragic and the rhetoric around it has been a bit tragic.
Totally agreed. And I think, even at the semi-pro, amateur, and recreational level in adult sports, this is an incredibly important conversation to have. So thank you. And Billy or Collin, did you want to make any comments on that? I just wanted to give you that opportunity if you wanted to.
I think Maya did a great job.
Right on.
Right?
Thank you for the work you're doing, Maya. It's really important.
So as I said, we're running a little low on time. So I'm going to throw off Tyler, who's back there with the script. Sorry, Tyler. And just ask each one of you for any last words or messages that you'd like to share with the folks watching this live stream. So we'll start with you, Collin.
No, just thank you so much for having me. Obviously, this last year has been tough for everyone, and hang in there. Hopefully things will be changing soon, and I can't wait to meet all you guys in the community here. And it's something that I've really missed this year. It's been great to play in San Diego, but to be able to not get to know the LGBTQ community has been it's been tough and it's been sad. So I can't wait to meet you guys, and yeah, thanks so much for having me. And I couldn't be happier to be in this city. So yeah, and nice to meet you, Martha and Maya, and good to see you again, Billy.
Yeah, we got lots to share with you, Collin. We can't wait to show you San Diego. We love our community. Maya.
I know.
I also miss San Diego a lot, coming out here from Philly. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to just be able to be a part of these conversations and to meet, folks like you, Collin, and to hang out with you, Martha and Billy again. It's just amazing to be able to share space with other folks who are queer in sports, and who are fighting for more equality and more inclusion. And I also am so excited for the pandemic to be over so we can all hang out in San Diego. And as Alex probably knows, who is backstage, we can all go to June Shine, which is my favorite, in San Diego. But yeah, thank you again. And it's really this visibility in these conversations, like visibility is so immensely and immeasurably important. And thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for always being a willing participant and sharing all your great knowledge. We wish you the best in Philly, and we can't wait for you to come back out here and show us a thing or two on the golf course.
Of course.
Billy.
Well, again, thank you for the invitation. I just want to applaud all the great work that San Diego Pride does, and encourage when fans are allowed to go back to the ballparks and stadiums, not only to go to Padre games, but to get together and go support Collin while he's playing in San Diego. That is just an amazing moment in time while he's a fit and healthy and, playing at the top of his sport, to go support. That's something I would love to do and be a part of as well. So stay safe. Everybody, just be patient until we get right to the finish line through this pandemic, and look forward to the ability to socialize and get to know each other and shake hands and high five and, all that.
Yeah, it'll be so good to see all of you again. And, the four of us could probably stay on here and have a conversation all afternoon. And so there's just so much out there. And I just want to say, on behalf of San Diego Pride and the whole community here in San Diego, thank you so much for all the work that all three of you are doing. We're here to support you as best we can. And I just want to thank you for being here and and sharing the space with our LGBTQ community and your stories. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Well, hopefully you've been inspired today. And if you have, we want you to get out and try a new sport. There are 18 different LGBTQ recreational leagues here in San Diego, ready to welcome new players as soon as it's safe to do so. And I happen to know that the softball league is going to get started pretty soon here in April. You can find more information about our sports leagues on this slide right here, but on our website too, sdpride.org/sports. Remember to tune in to our next virtual event, which I'm super excited about, next Monday with She Fest on International Women's Day, Monday, March 8th at 12 p.m. And if you enjoyed today's program and would like to see more discussions like these, please visit the San Diego Pride website at sdpride.org/donate to make a tax-deductible contribution. Your gift will help support all of our wonderful year-round programming. And then last but not least, I would want to give a huge shout out and a huge appreciation and thank you to the San Diego Pride staff, Alex Villafuerte, Tyler Vesquez, Mel Maharas, and Dave Matheson, and of course the rest of the San Diego Pride staff for all your behind the scenes work and support. And thank you all for tuning in. And we hope that we will get to see you again. Have a good day.